Hey, we started a new section and therefore we have a new lecture. This is lecture 4, The Principles of Map Design. As always, you can download the source file for this lecture down in the link in the description. Let's get started. Map design is a unique application of graphic design. It involves visually representing geographic or conceptual places with clarity, hierarchy, and aesthetics. It balances functionality and style using elements like typography, color, icons, and layout to enhance readability and user experience. Effective map design considers the purpose, the audience, the medium, ensuring that information is both accessible and also engaging. In this example by Alex Krugel, you can see that there are lots of little numbers that have to do with all of these different plot points on the map. We also have a guide down here at the bottom. So it's more than just plotting points on a map. It's about creating a clear, intuitive, and visually compelling guide that helps people to navigate a place. And in this map project, that's exactly what I want you to attempt to do. In this Kakheti design by Rita Kriplova, the map is very simplistic. All of the different elements are representations of a particular place, that region's culture, and different landmarks throughout this entire map. She's been very reductive about choosing what places that she's going to feature. So it should be easily read and avoid unnecessary clutter. See how this one has a very distinct color scheme? All of the content is exaggerated proportions and has a consistent style of design. She's chosen to take each place and illustrate them in her unique style and place them in exaggerated proportions all over this region. Here we have the illustrated guide that goes along with this map, taking all of those icons and enlarging them and then telling you a little tiny bit about traveling to this place. If you would like to see more of this project, click on the link in the slide. Next, we have Welcome to Cobtree. This is a park map made by Andrew Torrance, and it's supposed to be a kid-friendly map. And when we're talking in terms of design for that particular audience, you need to talk about hierarchy and visual contrast. The more important elements should stand out through size, color, and weight. So in this broader spectrum of looking at this map design, you can see very clearly all of the different activities in exaggerated proportions on the map. So it's very illustrative, it's easy to understand, and because it's made for parents and for kids, you don't necessarily need a lot of reading content as much as it is you need wayfinding. So this basically shows you where each thing is and located on what trail, and also the wooded walking trail map. If you would like to see more of this project, click on the link in the slide. Let's look at good hierarchy and visual contrast in a more adult-oriented design. This is Mike Hall's alternative design for the London Underground. It includes color-coded trains in order to make it easier to understand where you can get on the train and get off the train and which lines lead where. I think this is a really good coded solution. If you look down there at the bottom, there's also a guide with colors, again, associated with numbers and colors here for what train you're going to be on and which direction it's going. I certainly would find this very helpful at a subway station. So far, we've covered some good solutions to map design. Let's talk about the different layers in the readability of a map. So in consistency of design, you want to think always about legibility. In this article by Andrew Lau of Small Multiples Design Group, they talk about how maps are a series of layers. So the very first layer that you probably need to think about is that outer border layer called context. Are you showcasing a theme park? Are you showcasing a little piece of a continent? Are you doing a county or something like that? You need to make your audience understand the context of where they are. In addition to context, you also need to think about your elements of your map. So your labels, where your boundaries are, your streets, if you're going to include your streets, or if you're doing a map of a park, you would likely include walking trails. And also if there's any major land masses or water that you need to show your audience where they are. So think of it as an overlay system. The first layer is your landmass. You may want to use the line work for all of like the boundaries of where it is you're working, or use color blocking. Some of our examples that we showed before have very effective color blocking to show you what's land, what's a group of trees, what's a trail, and being consistent with that can really help your viewer in terms of navigating your map. Take a look at this layered example, and this is again is pulled from the article that I've linked. In short, you want to be reductive. You need to filter out the most important bits of information for your users. Since this is a contextual map, you get to choose what's important. So from left to right, we have an exhaustive satellite view, way too much detail. Then we have a Google Maps view. We're starting to get its, a navigable map. And then we have a really reductive map, and then we have a color-coded map. So you get to decide what the style of the map is, how you're going to use that to convey your wayfinding system, and what important bits of the map are you going to feature. So are you walking around a park, looking at different things to do in the park? Are you walking around a small town where you get to feature different aspects of the small town? Are you walking around a really big city where you definitely need to navigate those big buildings that are your show points of your map to give people context to where they're going? That's going to differ depending on the kind of map that you're making, and I encourage you to make it really personal. While we're talking about context and landmarks, I thought I would show you this map of New York City. And I really enjoy how the artist has chosen to emphasize key attractions with illustrations to help you get around this really large city, New York City. Unfortunately, I don't know who to credit with this one, but this is a link to the Etsy listing where I found this poster design. Let's take a closer look at some of the contextual landmarks here. So we have the major villages labeled, so West, Greenwich Village, Lower Manhattan, East Village, and we've also got some of the iconic buildings from those particular areas. So if you're looking to go and see the Flatiron Building, you can see that it's right next to Greenwich Village. These are the kind of contextual clues that you're going to want to put on your map so people can find their way around. I really like the illustration style and how consistent it is and how exaggerated proportions a lot of these things are in order to emphasize what this artist thought was most important about that particular area. I feel like we can't talk about map design without talking about park guides. Take a look at this old Disney map with illustrations of all the different attractions. Bear in mind, this was printed at a really large size, so some of this might seem really tiny to your eyes, but remember, it's supposed to be unfolded and carried and put right in front of your face. So this is a really large illustrative map. This is probably a lot more detail than you would ever want to go into for this particular project because of time constraints. But I wanted to show you something that was a really imaginative and very well illustrative in a vintage style like this map design. I love how each section of Disneyland is labeled by these little flag graphics, so that's maybe something that you could incorporate. We have some really tiny bits of text that tell you where each attraction is, and we also have some wayfinding things like a telephone and restrooms. While you may not be able to go into this exhaustive detail, it's really nice to look at some vintage map design where people were actually illustrating it. Let's move on to user-centered design. A map should be designed with the needs of the user in mind. Museum maps highlight accessible routes, restrooms, key exhibits, so we are always thinking about what that visitor needs. Another thing that I like to highlight about this particular set of maps is each floor has its own color scheme, so you don't get confused as to where you are in the museum, because it's a really large museum. If you'd like to see the rest of these maps, then click on the link in the slide. Let's move on and talk about the adaptability for different formats. Now you may have a client that needs a bunch of different formats of the same map. You have to take into consideration style and the consistency of the colors, but also translate those elements into different mediums. So does it need to work in print, but also in digital? But does it need to be a web page? So does it need to be interactive? The map you're making will have to work on an 11 by 17 poster. Then we're going to be adapting that poster into a 16:9 ratio map. This map is from Hollow Knight, one of my favorite video games. If you're feeling a little bit lost with your maps, if you like video games, go and take a look at the wayfinding in your video game and you might find a little inspiration there. What I really like about this map is not only does it take into consideration the terrain, but it also will show you where certain things are via this little map key here. These are called pins, and you can find where you can save the game, so you can go and sit on a bench. You can find where you can gather certain things. The overall theme is bug-oriented, and so I really do think that this also comes across in the design style. I think it is sort of inspired by one of those little bug terrariums, and it certainly looks that way as a series of tunnels under the ground. Don't be afraid to find inspiration in some pretty non-traditional places for this project. That wraps up our Principles of Map Design lecture. I hope you found that helpful. Our next video will begin our tutorial series about this project, so look for that about the middle of next week. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.